Hi there, it's Misty. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So I have something a little different to share with you today. The challenge this week at Simon Says Stamp Wednesday Challenge is anything but a card, and we are featuring products from my favorite things. So as soon as I started flipping through MFT products and I came across this wine tag, I already had an idea of what I wanted to make for this challenge. I've never made a wine tag before. I've always wanted to, and I just didn't have the products to do it. So I was really excited about this challenge. So this is just called a wine tag, and the wine glass is from the wine service die set that you see there. And I'm also using the cheers die, and then the stamp set is called Uncorked. And I'll have all these products listed and linked in the description below. So I'm using MFT Craft cardstock. I cut out 2 layers because I wanted, so the wine glasses you're going to be able to see through, and I wanted the back to kind of look finished as well. So I'm just going to kind of position my wine glasses where I want them. And in order to get this cut perfectly on both the front and the back layer, I'm going to stack them and I'm going to tape them together so it doesn't move, and I'm going to cut them at the same time. That way, you know, there's no chance that it's not going to line up perfectly. And as it turned out, I decided to add another layer anyway. So, you know, I had them still taped together, so it was pretty easy to cut out another layer and still have it line up correctly. So since I cut these at the same time, I ran them through my Big Shot a couple times just to make sure it was going to cut through that second layer. And because I did that, this Post-it tape, it almost like infused into my cardstock. I had a hard time getting it off. It was really stuck on there, which is surprising because it's Post-it tape. It's, you know, it's not really that sticky, but I eventually did get it off. So after I cut it here is when I decided I wanted to add this kind of Merlot color cardstock to the front. This is called Paver Red, and it's also by MFT. So I was trying to figure out how I was going to get this cut and, you know, still be able to line it up perfectly. And it's a little bit crooked, but not too bad. I was actually surprised it wasn't worse. But so I just put it behind the wine glasses and kind of traced where the wine glasses were, because see, they're still stuck together. So as long as I get them placed kind of in the right place, then it's going to cut the same as it did the wine tag. So I carefully cut that out, and to my surprise, it lined up pretty good. That's why I left a little bit hanging over on the left so that I could, you know, have a little wiggle room. I don't know if you can tell here, but that maroon paper is a little bit cockeyed. When I lined it up behind it to trace it, I didn't realize that it wasn't straight with the tag there, if that makes sense. So the wine glasses line up fine. It's just the whole maroon cardstock is just a tiny bit crooked, like a centimeter crooked. Enough to drive me nuts, but not enough to make me redo it. And then to add a little detail, I used one of Lawn Fawn's stitched borders and ran it across the top and the bottom of this maroon colored cardstock, just to give it a little something extra. So today's an exciting day. Simon Says Stamp has a fun new release that went live today. It's called Fun and Festive. So when you get a chance, you've got to check that out. They have some really cute items in this release. If you'd like to see what I made using one of the new products, just head over to my blog and I'll share with you what I made. And now I'm ready to start working on the little shaker pouches. Or I should say pouch. It's not plural. I'm just going to make 2 sides to it. So 1 pouch, 2 sides. While my fuse tool is heating up, I'm going to start sizing my pouch here. I made lines to show me where I wanted to cut it. And it just so happened that I grabbed the marker that I grabbed. I think it was a Memento Tuxedo marker instead of a Sharpie. So it's going to wipe off. So I'm going to cut out the size I need, and then I'm just going to wipe off that marker, since all I needed it for was to show me where to cut anyway. I'll make all kinds of other lines on this, but I think I swap it over to a Sharpie here in a minute. These are just I think it's, I don't even know what they're called. They're photo pockets. It's a 12 by 12 sheet and it holds, let's see, 4 by 6. So it holds 6 photos. Yeah. Do the math there, Misty. But they work great with the fuse tool. It's what I have, so it's what I used. They have like fusible sheets that are made for this, but these work well for me, so I'll use these up. I discovered that regular acetate doesn't fuse very well. Ask me how I know that. So now I'm going to fuse up a third side, so I just have the top, just the opening. And as I was marking off where I was going to fuse it to close the pouch, I decided it would probably make sense to make 2 different pouches, basically 2 different sections, one for each wine glass, because I was going to fill this thing with the micro beads, and that would have been, you know, kind of wasteful because there's that whole chunk there in the back that nobody's going to see. So I decided to section them off, and then that way I could put less beads in it and the beads would stay basically where you could see them. I love this fuse tool. I should use this more often, but it's perfect for these little micro beads like this. Now my next challenge was, how am I going to get the beads in these tiny little openings? It would have been easy if it was one pouch, one opening, but I just made it 2 tiny little openings. So I had this bright idea to put them in a little Ziploc that I had and cut the tip off like you do, you know, some people do with frosting to make your own little piping bag. So that's what I did. I put them in a little Ziploc, cut the corner, and it would have worked perfectly, but when I got the end in and I was funneling them in, it slipped out and I made a mess anyway, which is exactly what I was trying to avoid, but it did work. I just made a huge mess in the process. But once I got it in there, it worked beautifully. So I put in just enough for one side, and then I did it again for the other side. For the second side, I just pinched that where it's cut open, I just pinched it and then put in as many beads as I needed. And then I repeated the process without the mess this time. Then I just used my finger to push the beads down. There were some areas they didn't want to go on their own, so I just kind of pushed them down into the little crevices there. And then I'm going to use my fuse tool one last time to close up my little pouch. I shook it around a little bit to make sure there was no leaks. And next I'm going to tape my pouch right where I want it. I'm going to do that with score tape. This is 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to go all the way around the wine glasses, and then I'm also going to put a strip down the center, just because I don't want my pouch sliding around at all. I want it to stay in place. And the score tape is perfect for that. So I'm just going to take a second to line it up. Another reason I did all these lines is because I wanted to make sure that I fused it as close to the opening as possible. And so I just took a second to make sure you couldn't see any of those score lines in the window. All right, and then since I cut both of these at the same time, it really flattened my cardstock. So it kind of, I couldn't really see where that score line was. So I just took my SCOR-BUDDY here and rescored it. And now I'm going to glue the front and the back together. So I used liquid glue because I wanted a little bit of wiggle room to make sure I got it in place correctly. But then I thought the score tape would be better to use on the plastic. So I put score tape on the plastic, which then didn't really allow me any wiggle room, but at least it did around the opening here at the top. Fortunately, I stuck it where I needed to, and they lined up beautifully. I had originally planned on putting the cheers at the bottom where you see I have the stamp sitting there, but I don't know, it seemed a little too plain. So I decided to use the stamp. It says it's always a good time for wine. And I'm using the Merlot ink from Simon Says Stamp, which is the perfect color for this cardstock. And luckily I saw that there was a little, I'm sure it was a cat hair or a dog hair, but I'm so glad I saw that before I actually stamped this. Oh, that would have been terrible to mess up on this part. After all this, I'm always nervous about that. But usually there's always a way to fix your mistakes too, by either covering up the whole section or adding a sequin here or there. There's usually always a way. All right, and then just to add some dimension, I cut out the cheers 2 more times with my leftover craft cardstock. And then I glued those together and added them to my wine tag. And now I can say I've made a wine tag. Alright, that's my video for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project that I made for the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday Challenge. All of the supplies that I used are listed and linked in the description below, and you can always head over to my blog too for more information. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I hope you would consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. And while you're there, click on that little bell icon so that you won't miss any of my new videos. I usually post 1 new video a week. Alright, thanks so much. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye!